Elon Musk thought he landed a knockout blow on Twitter, but Jasmine Crockett didn't fight back with words. She responded with something far more powerful, and it left Elon scrambling on live TV. It dropped without warning. No context, no lead-in, no build. Just a tweet. A photo of Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett mid-sentence, mid-blink, mouth open like they'd waited for the worst frame and then froze it, cropped too tight. Saturation dialed up until her skin looked distorted under the house lights. The caption read, "When Congress turns into a DEI seminar, loud, clueless, and a black monkey town." He tagged her directly. No dog whistle, no subtlety, just a digital whip cracked in public, wrapped in a punchline. Within minutes, the replies lit up. Laughing emojis, banana gifs, screenshots of gorillas pasted beside her image. The same two slurs on loop, hundreds deep, then thousands. Alt accounts, blue checks, influencers who'd been waiting for the moment to pile on. A storm dressed up like a joke. And Elon? He logged off an hour later. Tweet still live. No retraction, no clarification, no "my bad." Just silence. The kind that doesn't feel quiet. The kind that hisses. By the half-hour mark, the screenshot was everywhere. On Reddit, in Discords, whispered into group chats, posted to message boards where usernames didn't bother hiding the hate. Cable news hadn't touched it yet, but online, it was the headline. Jasmine's name was trending for all the wrong reasons. But not because she said something, because she existed. Because she spoke policy with a voice that didn't flinch. Because she wore her hair natural on the House floor. Because she made some people uncomfortable just by not asking permission to be whole. And Elon? He turned that into content. A joke for the angry, a spectacle for the cynical. A moment designed not to be debated but to be felt by those who'd always known the game was rigged. No statement came from X. No community note. No policy flag. Just that picture. That caption. Still pinned to the top of a man who called himself a free speech absolutist, but had just tried to turn a sitting congresswoman into a meme meant to humiliate her into silence. The kind of tweet you don't forget. Not because of what it said, but because of who said nothing after. The text came before the tweet finished loading. 3 words from her comms director. "What the hell?" Jasmine opened the link. Froze. Not because she was shocked, but because she wasn't. Because she knew this play. Knew what it meant when a man with too much power and too few consequences decided to reduce a woman like her to something grotesque and viral. In the office, Brianna paced. "He tagged you. He really tagged you." The silence was heavier than shouting. "We have to respond," Brianna said, voice rising. "We need a takedown. Now." Jasmine didn't look up from the screen. She read the caption again, studied the photo, zoomed in. Then she said it calmly, too calmly. "You don't wrestle in the mud with someone who bought the swamp." Brianna blinked. "What does that even mean?" "It means," Jasmine said, finally meeting her eyes, "he wants noise. I'm not giving him noise. I'm giving him consequence." Not a tweet. Not a quote tweet dunk with a fire emoji and a slick comeback. That wasn't the play. Not when the goal wasn't to win the internet, but to remind people that she wasn't a moment. She was a problem for people like Elon because she didn't shake, didn't fold, and didn't perform. So she didn't rage post. She scheduled a press conference. Not to cry, not to vent, not to clap back. To lay it out. Clean. Sharp. With evidence and with names. "We let him speak," Jasmine said, walking to the whiteboard. "Now we speak back, but not in his language." Her team stared, still buzzing, still furious. But she was already writing. A timeline, a message, receipts. Not just of the tweet but of every person who had amplified it. Every org that stayed silent. Every sponsor who backed his companies while claiming to care about diversity in PR decks. "We're not canceling him," Jasmine said. "We're indicting the system that lets him keep doing this." It wasn't rage. It was strategy. Not retaliation. A reckoning. And Jasmine? She was done blinking. By morning, the voicemails were stacked. Hundreds of them. Some screamed. Some laughed. One just breathed. Slow and deliberate. Like the caller wanted her to hear what it sounded like when power enjoyed itself. "Get out of Congress. You dumb monkey. You're what's wrong with America." Her staff tried to listen through them, tried to filter the worst. But how do you filter a flood? How do you screen venom when it's systemic? The inbox was worse. Messages with doctored images, death threats masked as sarcasm, Memes of her face photoshopped onto zoo exhibits, screenshots from group chats with usernames like "Her place is the kitchen 77." And it wasn't just strangers. It was influencers, big ones. Right-wing grifters with followings in the millions, echoing Elon's words like scripture, posting clips of her floor speeches with laugh tracks added, hashtagging her name under Clown of the Day. One segment on Fox News didn't even try to spin it. "The face of the left's emotional breakdown," the anchor said, her image on full screen like a mugshot. And still, Jasmine stayed off Twitter. Didn't tweet. Didn't quote. Didn't post a selfie with a cryptic caption or a fire emoji or a subtweet about staying unbothered. She just sat at her desk, reading, highlighting, documenting. The silence wasn't surrender. It was surveillance. She watched who posted, who liked, who stayed quiet. The blue checks who'd once asked for interviews now pretending not to see. Her comms team hovered, waiting. It felt unnatural to say nothing. She should respond. One aide whispered, "This can't go unanswered." But Jasmine just shook her head. "Let them talk," she said, barely above a whisper. She clicked her pen, underlined a sentence in the report on AI bias she'd been editing before the tweet dropped. "I'm going to build my response like I build policy with receipts." Because rage was momentary. But records? Those outlast the headlines. The requests came fast. CNN, MSNBC, Pod Save America, The View, even an Instagram Live invite from a progressive influencer who'd once called her the future of black femininity. They all wanted the moment. The clapback, the zinger, the memeable quote that could be sliced into a 15-second reel and stitched into reaction videos. Her team asked, politely, hopefully, "Want to do Anderson? Rachel? We'll script it tight." Jasmine looked up from her notes. The same answer, calm as ever. No. Instead, she stuck to the schedule. A town hall in Houston, already planned, already promised. No cameras, no press, just folding chairs in a high school cafeteria that still smelled like floor wax and leftover pizza. The walls were lined with paper hearts and marker signs about upcoming tutoring nights. This was the work. They didn't live stream it. There was no branded backdrop. Just people tired, curious, angry, quiet. And Jasmine blazer off, sleeves rolled, sitting on the edge of a folding table, present. Halfway through, a black mother stood up, voice trembling. "My daughter saw that tweet," she said. "She asked if speaking up makes you a joke." Jasmine didn't blink. She walked toward her, didn't grab a mic, didn't pontificate. Just stood close enough to be human. Then answered quiet, clear. "Not if you finish the conversation." The room went still. No applause. No echo. Just breath. One woman's question, another's answer. And between them, a truth Elon Musk would never understand. That not everything loud is power. And not every silence is surrender. Some are preparation. Some are memory. And some are just the pause before the reckoning. It took 72 hours. Not because she was stalling, but because the point wasn't speed. It was precision. The press conference wasn't flashy. No flag backdrop, no branded lectern, just a plain podium in a community center she'd visited long before anyone was watching. Jasmine walked in wearing a simple navy blazer. No makeup artist, no hair team, no stylist, just the kind of presence you don't need to dress up to make real. The room was full. Reporters. Cameras. Some familiar, some not. But when she stepped up to the mic, they stopped shuffling, stopped whispering, stopped thinking this might be another soundbite battle in the daily outrage war. Because Jasmine didn't start with a tweet. She didn't even mention Elon by name. Not once. She started with history. A short one. A sharp one. A timeline of harassment masked as humor. Of hate accounts reinstated in the name of free speech. Of algorithms trained to amplify cruelty. Of content warnings stripped, protections gutted, safety mocked into irrelevance. And then she said, "When a billionaire tries to weaponize your face, your tone, and your existence, it's not about speech. It's about control." The room held its breath. She didn't raise her voice, didn't perform outrage. She let the facts stack line after line, frame by frame. The targeting of trans creators. The erasure of black voices. The rise in racial slurs since the platform changed hands. The quiet collapse of digital dignity, dressed in the language of liberty. "This isn't about offense," she said. "It's about harm. This isn't personal. It's systemic." No one blinked. Not because they didn't want to, because they couldn't. Because in that moment, Jasmine Crockett wasn't trending. She was indicting, and everyone in that room felt it. Not just the truth of what she said, but the power of what she didn't need to say. The first clip hit X less than 10 minutes after she stepped off the podium. No Chiron, no edit, just her voice, steady over silence. By noon, it had 3 million views. By sundown, it was on every feed that had pretended not to see the tweet 3 days earlier. When a billionaire tries to weaponize your existence. That line was everywhere. But it wasn't the line that detonated the internet. It was the other clip, the one from the town hall. The one no network had aired. The one someone had recorded on a shaky phone with bad lighting and good timing. A little girl, no more than 10, stood during Q&A. Her braids were tight. Her voice, not so much. They tried to make you small. The camera caught Jasmine looking at Hersoft, still, unshaken. And I reminded them I never needed their permission to be whole. That was it. That's what cracked the story open. Not the press conference. Not the headline quote. But the moment that didn't ask for attention, it earned it. Celebrities reposted it. Educators clipped it into presentations. Activists stitched it with their own stories of being silenced. Shouted down, reduced to caricature and content. Not your punchline trended for 48 hours straight. But it wasn't rage driving it. It was recognition. Because Jasmine hadn't just spoken for herself. She'd spoken for every person who had ever been turned into a joke for daring to show up as themselves. And in a world trained to scroll past pain, she didn't go viral by shouting. She went viral by standing still and letting the truth do the talking. She didn't call a press conference. She didn't tweet a response. She published a report. Title: When Platforms Enable Hate, a case study on algorithmic racism. 84 pages. Dense, sourced, surgical. Her name wasn't on the cover. Her face wasn't in the preamble. But Musk's tweet? It was Exhibit A. Page 2. Screenshot. Time-stamped. Archived. Labeled as what it was. An act of targeted humiliation amplified by algorithmic bias. The report didn't rant. It unpacked. It showed how hate speech rose 54% after platform moderation teams were gutted. How Elon reinstated accounts flagged by civil rights watchdogs. How keyword suppression for slurs was quietly removed, all in the name of free speech. It linked patterns posts flagged, but left untouched when the targets were Black, women, trans, Jewish, Muslim. And in the middle of it all, Jasmine's image, blasted out to millions, echoed through replies, weaponized by the same mechanics meant to connect people, now used to degrade them. The press didn't know what to do with it at first. It wasn't a headline. It was homework. It asked them to read, to reckon. But advocacy groups saw it instantly for what it was, a blueprint. Within 24 hours, 5 civil rights orgs cited it in open letters. Educators taught it in media literacy courses. Lawmakers asked for briefings. Twitter still pretending to be called issued a single-sentence statement. We are reviewing our internal moderation protocols in light of recent community concerns. But the concern wasn't recent. It had been there. In internal forums, employees had raised red flags about the tweet the hour it posted. One engineer warned it would ignite targeted abuse at scale. Another flagged the tagging of a public official in a manipulated image. They were ignored. Screenshots leaked. And suddenly, Jasmine's story wasn't just personal. It was precedent. Because now the receipts had names, dates, escalation chains. The system had been warned. And it chose silence. Elon Musk, master of deflection, finally tweeted. Not an apology, not clarity, just, sorry I hurt feelings, just thought Congress was for ideas, not crying contests. A smirk in sentence form, a non-apology designed to bait, to shift the story back to his terms. But this time, it didn't land. Because this time, the story had already moved without him. Advertisers noticed first. Not activists, not watchdogs, brands. 2 major sponsors suspended ad buys, pending review of platform safety. Then 4 more followed. By noon, ad revenue estimates dropped 7%. By nightfall, a Tesla shareholder issued a public memo calling the tweet indefensible and reputationally corrosive. The quote got picked up by Bloomberg, then CNBC, then Reuters. And by morning, Tesla stock slipped 2%. Elon tried to meme it off, posted a Doge joke. retweeted a fan account. But something was off in the rhythm. The applause wasn't there. The fanboys were quieter. The engagement down. Not just from people who disagreed, but from people who were tired. Because this wasn't just about Jasmine. It was about the pattern. The repetition of cruelty disguised as commentary. Of power hiding behind sarcasm. Of billionaires punching down and calling it provocation. And now the markets were listening. Not because they cared about dignity, but because shame finally had a number attached. Jasmine didn't respond. Didn't spike the ball. Didn't post a victory lap tweet. She just kept doing the work. And that was the part they still didn't understand. Because while they were measuring volume, she was measuring impact. And impact doesn't trend. It builds. No press tour, no merch drop, no, I told you so. Just policy. 3 days after the stock dip, Jasmine's office released a one-page summary. The Digital Accountability and Harassment Transparency Act. No fanfare. Just a PDF link and a line that read, "We deserve platforms that protect, not punish their users." The bill was precise, not poetic, not performative. It called for mandatory algorithm audits by independent third parties, annual racial bias assessments, a federal oversight board to track abuse patterns across major platforms, legal protections for public officials and civilians targeted through manipulated content. It even included a section on user redress, what it looks like when platforms are forced to fix what they break. It wasn't just a response. It was a reframe. Within hours, 5 lawmakers co-signed, 2 of them Republicans. A coalition formed civil rights groups, digital ethicists, disinformation experts. A tech accountability nonprofit called it the strongest federal push for platform transparency to date. The press circled back fast. Microphones, questions, headlines ready to spin. One reporter, almost sheepish, asked, "Did Musk's tweet inspire this bill?" Jasmine didn't hesitate. "No," she said, voice even. The silence that followed it did. No smile, no edge, just truth. Because the tweet was loud. The meme was louder. But the silence? The silence from the platforms, from the brands, from the lawmakers who'd reposted his jokes before but suddenly went quiet? That's what birthed the bill. Not outrage. Absence. That's what made her move. Because while the country debated tone, she was writing policy. And while Musk chased claps, she wrote law. 1 week later, she stood behind a plastic podium in a high school gym in Atlanta. Not DC. Not New York. Not LA. Just rows of folding chairs, a squeaky mic, bright overhead lights buzzing like an old air conditioner. A youth leadership summit. Mostly girls, mostly black. Some confident, some shy, all watching. Jasmine didn't bring notes. She read from her phone messages from girls who looked like her. One had written, "I used to think if I spoke too much, I'd get laughed at. Now I think silence costs more." Another simply said, "You made me want to finish the fight." Jasmine looked up, paused, then ended with this. "They wanted to make me a meme. I became a mirror." The crowd stood before she finished the sentence. Not clapping, standing. No music cue, no applause sign. Just presence. Real, earned, and irreversible. Elon, he tweeted less now. His feed more curated, his replies more filtered. The arrogance quieter but still there, in the way silence lingers after a public wound. But the tweet? Still archived. Still screenshotted. Still dissected in digital ethics classes and civil rights lectures. Still held up as an example of what happens when power forgets its reach and underestimates who's listening. Because the real clapback wasn't loud. It wasn't clever. It wasn't viral. It was legislative. Permanent. And now, it has a bill number. This story was brutal. But this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.